Greetings, my name's Frank Hinton and welcome to the Australian Commercial Entertainment Technology Association Archive of Excellence program. In this episode we are pleased to present one of Australia's leading audio engineers for broadcast, Mr. Colin Stevenson. Thanks Colin, and by the way, this is probably the first time you've been in front of the camera.
Yes, I like to stay that way too.
Have you been to Macau?
No.
Me neither. Okay. Now, you were born in Gippsland in 1940 and that's when it all began, and then moving into the 1950s, Colin, you started to develop an appetite for audio.
Yes, I discovered the crystal set.
Did
you?
Yes. Want to tell us about it?
No, it's the guy in the seat, used to sit in the seat in front of me.
And how old were you?
He was in grade 6, I was in grade 5.
Oh, grade 5.
Yeah, and that's state school, Druin State School. And he used to pass the earpiece over and I'd have a listen to it, and I got sprung a couple of times by our female teacher. But I took to that, and then I started buying Radio and Hobbies, which was the journal that we all go for, or still do, I think, the industry, except it's radio and television and hobbies. Out came peanut valves. They were just little valves with I think it was 1.5 volt filament, so it was one little battery. And the deal was to make up a proper reactance radio. So I got into that. There was a radio station in Warragul, 3UL, that there was a kid down in Druin that, was into all this stuff. And maybe you should give him a little bit of work experience. And I found that my female teacher, who was long past, rang them and had a word, and they took me on, and I went up there, and I was like the proverbial pig in wherever.
In 1958, I understand you joined Channel 7, HSV7, and not long after, early in 1960, you travelled to the UK to work in the TV industry over there.
How we got to Channel 7 was 3UL took on 2 new personalities, Ron Bond and Madeline Burke. You may have heard of them. Yeah. And as you know, radio stations have, in those days, 16-inch turntables, because all of our stuff came on 16-inch transcription, which, being the kid, I had to parcel up and catch trains and thing, and that had to be here and there and at such and such. Anyway, they were brilliant together, but they needed a break. Neither of them were operators, Grams operators we'll call them, say turntable operators is the thing. So Madeline come and said, Collie, she used to call me cauliflower, will you come and play some records for us or do something, because we can't just keep talking endlessly. So I got the odd bit of music, and I noticed they had a reasonably restricted sound effects library. It was like the standard thing. So I took that in with me. And her and Ron were sort of telling kids' jokes. It was on between 4 and 6 that they were on each day, 5 days a week. So I thought, oh, no, this, I put a thing on, it was a cockerel crowing, and just played that. And of course they heard it in their earphones, and Madeline staring at me, and Ron looked as if he was going to come punch me on the nose. Then they both burst out laughing. Well, that took off. So they would be doing things, and I would just chuck effects in and try and make it so it worked. And the manager of the station came up and he grabbed me and he said, "You're a bloody genius, mate. They're loving it. Switchboard's jammed. Kids come home from school to listen to the radio." And I thought, hello, there is more to being just techo.
Oh, yeah.
And that's where the operational side came in. Anyway, they ended up going down because of this. Seven were looking for a kid show.
Right.
And they took them on, and I got invited to go down and visit them one day and have a look. And to find out that there'd been a meeting with the chief engineer organised, Jim Fisher, and he said, "Would you like a job in the Big Smoke?" I said, "Where am I going to live, Mr. Fisher?" And he said, "Oh, the YMCA is all right." Well, I didn't particularly like his choice of wine there. The vintage was a bit off, but it was lovely. So it all went from then. I did the opening of their telly theatre. They went into in Fitzroy. I made my way up. Did Frank Wilson's Tonight Show called Club 7. And we became really good mates. With three others, we decided that to learn more, we needed to get over to England and have a look around.
So, Colin, in 1960, you and a couple of mates set sail for the UK.
We get there, there's an equity strike on. It's all stopped. Right. So...
By the way, you had a job lined up before you left?
No.
No. Okay.
No. I'd applied we all had applied for so many jobs. And I got a letter. I came home from stacking timber and there was this letter and all the boys were sitting around having "You got a letter? If you've got a job, we're going to do you." Anyway, it was border television saying they were on the Scottish border and explained where they were, and they needed somebody with experience. I must have written a lovely letter, quite a few cans, I think. Yeah. Anyway, that's where I met wife, Margaret. I was boom operator on some shows, mixed others. Ended up doing a disc with Johnny Kidd and the Pirates.
Johnny Kidd
You
and the
may,
Pirates. Certainly
yes,
do.
they had them up there as special guests, and they arrived with a backing tape.
Right.
And I thought, God, we've got Johnny Kidd and the Pirates coming up. So I'd put it run out mics everywhere, which I thought would cover it all, because I was a fan. And they turned up and they said, "What are these props?" And I said, "No, you're going live, aren't you?" So they did a thing and he came to the control room and he said, "We're ready, mate. Let her go." Anyway, after that was all over, a week later, in the post arrives a carton of cigarettes from the band saying, need you down here because it's the way to go. Now, in England, the strike was over, and Thank You Lucky Stars was the big, I guess, equivalent of our bandstand.
Yeah.
Right? Very, very popular. All groups were on it. And we had control of the network for the weekends. Thames did in Manchester.
Right.
The rest of the week came out of London, right? And we got it up there. But during the week, we'd get a call to go and there'd be a session, and we'd be going to tape a group for the week or some other job. And so we were virtually on call 5 days.
Was it at this point that you had the brief encounter with the Beatles?
Yes. Yes, they turned up that day. They weren't the Beatles to the size that you know them. No. They had, I can't give you times, but had come back from over in
Hamburg? Yeah.
And they were there. I was on the boom, this particular, and it was an interview for the thing, and they were going to play one of their filmed clips in London. So I get up on the boom, and of course the end of it all wobbles round. So Leonard's up the other end, and it's, I suppose 3 feet from his head, and he sees this thing going up and down, thinking, shit, somebody's after me. So he grabs it, and he said, right, I'll take you off. And we had a great laugh. And they were good blokes. Don't remember, it was the other drummer then, I'm sure. Yeah.
Yeah, so this is before they'd hit the charts and that, I suppose, is it?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, they were just, they were the Beatles,
Yeah.
but they weren't the Beatles.
No, understood. Okay. You were married by this particular point in time. Margaret was pregnant, and you decided you needed to come back to Australia in about 1964, was it, Cole?
Hadn't planned on having a family that early.
So you got back in 64 and went straight to GTV9, Melbourne.
When I got back, I got a letter from Bill Armstrong to go and chat to him, which I did. And that's why I was interested in your last interview.
With Roger Savage.
Yes, with Roger Savage. But Roger took, I would have said, that position. And also Seven said, when you get back here. And it was all that. But no, I decided to not. And 9, everybody had packed up. I don't understand why. And gone to 10. They were all heading out. John Cannon, brilliant mixer. Very, very good mixer. He'd headed off out and sort of left 9 with their juniors. Or if not juniors, above juniors who expected to be elevated.
Right.
Is that subtle enough?
That's subtle enough.
Yeah.
And you then stepped in shortly after into the role of audio director for IMT in Melbourne Tonight with Graham Kennedy.
I met up with Rod Kinnear, who is probably the late Rod Kinnear, one of the most geniatic boys around. Pardon me if that's not a genuine word. and worked with him, and everything he would ask, mention, thing, you know, I was used to doing and it would be into it. Studio 9 was about 2 months off their big studio that they built. Was they were going to go across to it in 2 months. So I did, after a couple of nights of sitting in with Graham's IMT in Studio 1, the original little studio with the band shell and everything you could put in was sort of there. Did 2 shows, had one goof, but had a gentleman go round and give me a level on all the microphones in, right? Yep. This caused the crew to go to management and say, well, who does he think he is? And so I had the chance to tell them, and I did. So when we got into Studio 9, we found that the PA speakers for the audience are hanging from the roof. The crane went back up into the audience. When they swung it round, it'd whack a box. Swung it this way, it'd whack another box. So I drew up some little speakers in metal boxes, had them made by Roller up on the corner, Bridge Road, and they were all put on a 100-volt line. No one had heard of 100-volt line out here. No. They had it in England, so I got it out from there. Yeah. And that was the difference there.
And Colin, tell me, it's presumed that Graham Kennedy was an extremely difficult man to work with. Would you say that is actually the case because of the ad-lib nature of the whole damn show, even the ads?
I would absolutely deny that.
Yeah, is that right? Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Yes, he was. Graham Kennedy, just before he went on, you know, the audience are all in. He's in the back of the set and he shakes. The moment, here's Graham, and he steps out and the audience applaud, it's like he just relaxes and out it all went. And I used to go and have a beer with him, which others did. He was not, I can't remember the word you stated, but he certainly
difficult?
Never.
No,
but he wouldn't take any either.
No.
You know, I mean, anything he didn't think was professional. But no,
and we probably haven't got time to talk about after the show and the convent that was known as the Ark.
Well,
you probably wouldn't want to talk about that, Colin.
Well, the Ark is a crow call, basically.
Yeah.
If you convert it slightly.
Yeah.
And he seemed to get himself into a small amount of poo with that one.
Yeah, industry legend stuff, that. Yeah.
But he was prepared to take on the government's so-called, which was a bit of a joke, them all of a sudden trying to say. You look at television now, and I've heard the worst word in the afternoon when kids are watching.
Yeah. So I guess now we're moving, because we've got so much to talk about, we're moving to the 1970s and enter the Don Lane Show, which was a great period, wasn't it, in broadcasting, particularly variety broadcasting, and you were the man again, the audio director. And not only that, but this is where you did also introduce some new techniques, didn't you, particularly with wireless microphone technology.
The Don Lane Show appeared. Don was in Sydney and used to do a Tonight Show up there. Jeff Harvey was the music director.
Yeah.
We broke ice by me coming up with the idea of doing a mix minus. I named it that at the time, between Don and Graham, to see if we could get them together. That was before this, so it's a little bit out. And what that meant was that I did a mix that went to Sydney at the orchestra for Don, and he sang there, Graham sang down here, and we put them all together, right?
Right.
And they did duets, and it proved to be pretty popular, you know.
And progressive.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, you know, there was, Graham got a bit more press going, and you know, it took off. Sorry, I left that out, but
That was Thank you.
But it did happen, and now we go back to Peter and Don. Well, we had a change of music director then too.
Yeah.
Graham Lyle come on the scene.
Yeah.
A delightful guy,
Yeah.
super to work with,
And a world-class musician, conductor, arranger.
unbelievable. Yeah. He would, you know, Don could go and sort of say, no, that's not how we agreed we were going to do it. And Graham would just say, well, what do you want it, the right way or your way?
Yeah.
And he'd turn his back, you know,
Yeah.
pick up his saxophone. Don would say, righto, let's do it. And away it'd go.
Yeah.
Or you could, Don occasionally would have a shout, and then, you know, before the night was out, you'd feel his arm around your neck.
Yeah.
Sorry, mate.
Great. And tell me, we need to know, because this may have been a first also, you actually did a show on an aircraft carrier. A Don Lane
Yes,
show.
yes.
Right. Gee.
Yes, it's called Let's Make It Hard for Yourself.
Yeah. Yeah. The 1970s and doing a show on an aircraft carrier.
On an aircraft carrier,
Which carrier was it?
the Melbourne, I think.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I guess there would be numerous challenges to doing a show on an aircraft carrier. I mean, can you name a couple?
Of
A whole lot.
of the problems.
What was it like for you being the audio guy?
Oh, ridiculous.
Was it?
Well,
Yeah.
there was sort of room to try and get mixes in. I don't think so. The OB vans, they were, we were on the dock obviously, and they were. It was just one of the planes moved, slumped like that, just as we were going on. I believe it was pretty sensational. I didn't want to remember that one. I think probably one of the better feats was that Jenny, Peter's wife, was Don's manager also.
Right.
And she made arrangements to get into Elvis's house over there. And they wanted to go through and thing. Yeah, all good. She teed it up. She's a professional manager. So that all came about, and I thought, oh, here we go. So Don said, am I going to take a tape over there and mime or something? No. So we sent the orchestra live and did our bit again. And he sang 2 Elvis songs. One sitting
in Gracelands.
In Gracelands.
Yeah.
Actually sang them in Gracelands.
And you had the band in the Melbourne studio.
The band was down here.
Right.
And if you can just imagine it.
And you had an audience as well.
And a live audience.
Yeah.
Now, what I had to do was put a special row of much higher powered speakers along, and then when it came on, get so it was up with the orchestra. But that made it worse. So
this is where you developed your grey hair, mate, wasn't it?
What grey hair? Just hair I need. So both numbers came off, and it was, the people over there were pretty fantastic, you know. And Elvis used to sit there to do this, to there to write, and it was a really descriptive. And I was thrilled to bits because the songs and Don sounded good.
So just for the benefit of the viewers, particularly the Boffin viewers who are scratching their head with all of this, what was the delay time in terms of the broadcast and the live experience?
It went around a second.
Right.
And I had to chase. I had to guess and chase when they started.
Yeah.
Now, we got, you know, good vibes out of the people in the government department, and we said, you know, we'll give you a plug and thank you. And they said, well, it depends exactly what time you're going because we're moving.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And if your route over there with the orchestra on it is its satellite happens to be moved where it's going, and what you set up at rehearsal is not going to happen on the night.
Right.
So we can't guarantee any of that.
No.
So it's one of these things, but you write it all down and sign it, but we won't guarantee it'll work.
So the onus is all on you, really, wasn't
Yeah,
it?
it was.
Yeah.
It was.
Yeah.
And I just had to sit there thinking of the people down below. All it's going to be down there is megawatts of everything, you know.
Wow, okay. Well, that's something. So also, we're in the 1970s, and at some point in time in the 70s, you got the tap on the shoulder from none other than Kerry Packer, didn't you? Who said, young fella, I'm starting World Series cricket and you're the audio man. Is that correct?
Well, it was another challenge.
Tumultuous time in Australian sport too, wasn't it?
Well, yes, it was. And initially it wasn't Kerry, it was CJS who put his foot in it, because they had a night and they're showing cricket on a big screen, and all I could hear was commentators. It was tight shots of bats hitting balls and clack bang and all that. And one of the executives said, "What do you think of that?" And I said, "There's an old saying." And he said, "Well, if you thought it, it must be bloody old." And he said, "What is it?" And I said, "If you can see it, you got to hear it." So he said, "Well, what's wrong with that?" And I said, what if there's a snick? You're going to take the umpires, bloody, and he's behind and he's thing like that, and they all move around and think and don't agree with it. It's wrong. And he just looked at me and he said, "Well, bloody, we'll fix it."
Oh, right. So here's more creativity, huh?
Yeah. So it started off by a couple of us digging trenches out and putting 4 mics in.
Right.
Now, all the pitches then were all what was played, football was played on, right? And they all had their footy stumps in and all that. So when it came cricket time, they used to roll it and try and get it flat and go like hell, you know. Then I had to put 4 mics in. I had to get them out either side of the bowler, come down, and here's the batsman. He's looking up here, but the effects mics are down there. Useless. But you could hear it all. And Kerry was told, "Come and see what Steve-O's done." So Mr. Packer comes down and we're out at VFL Park. Remember where?
That was one of the original grounds, wasn't it, for World Series cricket?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And we're sitting there with 2 sets of headphones, and we've dug the tracks, the 4 cables come in, and the microphones are out, right out. So Lily's there, and he'd been bowling, and you know, I really didn't like it, and then one of the guys from India, I think, a fast bowler, a Lily, he bowled and got him on the foot. And Lily jumped.
So this was Lily batting, was it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Lily jumped up and down and with his foot and going, all of that. So on we play. And Kerry's going, yeah. Then down came the next ball, and he's really got some speed up, and he gets Dennis right in the bunch. Right in the bunch.
Right.
Now, in those days, bowlers didn't wear protectors here. Batsmen did. But bowlers didn't because
tell me, you
it
got a
slowed
fair-
them down running.
Oh dear, yeah.
So he copped it there,
Wow.
right? And this was going out to air. It was,
On your microphones.
yeah.
Right.
And Lily,
Yeah,
who copped it there,
yeah.
said, he doubled up and he said, "F you, you see."
Right.
And I just started to get the faded down on the C part. And Kerry turned round and looked at me and said, "Got a bit of work ahead of us, son, haven't we?" So he asked me.
So for the viewers, you didn't have any time delay, did you?
No.
That was straight to air.
From Sydney, from a board meeting in Sydney, down came, well, what a stupid soul the Melbourne audio bloke is, because all radio stations just use a 10-second delay. And if you get language like that, you just push the button.
Yeah, right.
And
Oh dear.
so I sent a note saying, well, play what's on a tape coming up, and the tape was numbered. And that's it delayed. You hear crack, and the bowler is walking backwards up the other end of the thing. So that was obviously, I mean, gross stupidity. And Mr. Packer was there as well. I said, "I know where the microphone's got to go." And he said, "Do you?" And I said, "Right behind the middle stump." And he said, "Why?" And I said, "Because the batsman who's going to say that word is a good metre out there, right? And he's facing that way, talking down there. Not as he was before, looking straight into these microphones. Right." And I said, "And if there were cutouts specially made, we could drop the new type of radio transmitters eventually in there, and we wouldn't have to dig trenches." We started off trenching and then couldn't get radio mics that the batteries would last a session of cricket. Eventually did. Sony again, friends. So we refined that and we got it going more. The funny part was that the English heard that we were getting, that they played some of the cricket from Australia, and there's snick and ping and bang and, you know, well, you can tell when the batsman's there and he's waiting for the bowler to run up. You hear him going tap, 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 tap with his bat, right? Yeah. It's alive. Yeah. And then snick as it goes past, you hear the stumps come off. Yeah. You actually hear them go ding, ding, ding.
And this was a first?
Oh, absolutely.
Never been done before?
No.
No.
Now, just a bit of a story. I had actually approached Sony about building one of their transmitters on a chassis that went inside a cricket stump, and they'd started doing it for me. But what stopped it was that they now have cameras in the stump.
I know, yeah.
You see? So once the video boys walk past, and, "What are you doing?" "Oh, we're putting microphones inside the stump." Well, of course, the video blokes, "Oh, fuck them off." Yeah. Oh, we were.
That's
That's got to go in.
That's got to go in, yeah. So moving into the 80s, another pivotal period for you was when you and your family, Marg, along with Graham and Karen, your daughter, you started Production Audio Services. I think 1985, was it?
Yeah. We had the name before that, but
But you started in earnest. Yeah.
yes. Well, my
Yeah.
contract said that I didn't, but you know,
Right.
I used to know a few people overseas.
Yeah. So this is sort of interesting because you've really traversed. You've been an artisan. You've even been an artist because as a young fella you played violin, didn't you? You learned violin.
Oh, for a year.
Yeah. But you had that experience and then the artisan and then the business side of it and playing around with technology and to see a company that's really one of the most highly respected companies in Australia. And I think did you not start out really focusing on the broadcast sector with Production Audio Services?
Oh yes,
Yeah.
yes. Yes. We were pretty much into broadcast. We would do churches. Yeah. Fixed up quite a few churches, and other places of worship, with the latest technology, not huge big square boxes, but stuff that was evenly placed, low level, clean, didn't echo its head off.
And I guess all throughout this period, right from 1958 onwards with television production, you also were involved in a lot of events right through that period. I'm talking here about Carols by Candlelight, vast amounts of concerts, for broadcast and all sorts of things, too many to mention. But I understand your last major event was the Sydney Olympics in 2000. Is that so? Yeah. Now that must have been something.
Well, that was an event.
Yeah.
And it was actually, I think the Seven Network came after me to get involved in that. I lived in Sydney for 6 months.
Right.
Working on the games. And, if you think you're asking questions, my God, the questions were being asked up there, There, we didn't bring it in, but we were putting the new type radio mics that came out, little square fellas, on hats. There was prior to the start of the games, there was a band with 500, I think there's 560 people in it. Graham just got me the amount before. Oh, no. And
I think that's right, 560 you said, yeah.
Yeah. And
that was a marching band, was it?
Marching band,
Yeah.
and they were all strips, and they made patterns. Very, very, very clever stuff, and rehearsed. Now, for me to see it and hear it, we had 4 or 5 buses, and we went way out of Sydney to this huge out of town area, and it ended up that the leader of each, if there were 20 of a particular instrument, there would be a leader at the front, and they'd leave a semi-appropriate gap like that. Now we made that into an audio follow video box, which was one of my very early things we've left out.
Right.
That if you punch up that camera, the telly light in it, there's a light comes on the front of the camera. Well, that telly light activated the mic channel and would open that one and drop the others that weren't on.
Right.
So this was based on that, plus mics on pole with cameras all around. So wherever there was a mush of the whole band loose, but whatever camera they took in whatever section, that would come on top of it. So if they went to the drums, you'd hear them rat-a-tat-tat-tat-tat, and they would stick out. So they'd be out of mix, you know, like the normal mix.
Yeah.
But because you could see them, you could hear them. And it's the old saying, if you can see them, you've got to hear them.
Well, yeah. So you've got many awards, and you also did the Royal Command performance in Sydney at the Opera House, didn't you?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
and I think probably that's the best. The hardest.
Was it?
Oh, well,
Yeah.
well, where I was one of the rooms off the side of the stage, and you've got a picture of the mixers all in there, and there's a multi-track there. It wasn't used. It was in case somebody turned up and said we've got to use a multi-track, but no, Olivia Newton-John on that concert did "Don't Cry for Me, Argentina,"
Right.
and I cry when I hear it.
Yeah, right. It was such an engaging performance. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
everyone was sensational.
Yeah.
Farnham was on. He was on the first Sony radio mic, and the head man of Sony was in the audience. I got him in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You've had a great relationship with some of those microphone producers, haven't you? Like Sony and Neumann. I've seen some old Neumanns
Yes.
at work. So you've had that very good relationship with those sort of creators of that sort of technology.
Oh yeah.
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 Which you've obviously enjoyed.
Oh well, I mean it's a necessity, and
That's where it all starts, doesn't it?
yeah, and if I had the tools to build them myself and the time, I would.
Yeah.
But I'm even Graham rang me and said, go into the so-and-so theatre, Harry Miller's in there, he wants to talk to you. So, Harry Miller. So I went in and he had the cast of Hair there. Now Hair was very, very, is Melbourne going to allow this because it, and all that. Where do you put radio mics? Are they going to all be walking around with a tail?
Yeah.
That's the antenna, by the way.
Yeah.
So I went in and I asked if they would go through in quicker time where they were and just give me just a few bars of the level they'll be singing around the stage. Plotted it out and hung a particular Neumann, the little slim ones that we got made for telly.
Right.
You know, the silver ones about that long. And they just hang on the cable, and you really, in the audience, you couldn't see them.
No.
But everybody said to me, well, it'll never work. they're 4, 5, 6 feet from somebody singing. And I said, okay, which song do you like the most? So they told me, so in the middle of it, I just turned off the PA in the theatre.
Yeah.
You couldn't hear him. Put it back on, you could hear him.
Yeah. So Colin, what we've gathered through the interview with you, you had to create a lot of things that didn't exist in terms of the evolution of broadcasting from way back in the 50s, you know, to the current day and your participation in it. What would you see as the pivotal breakthroughs, you know, in technology that made your job a lot easier?
A lot of it, I guess, is my relationship with Carl Countryman for miniature mics to get the Logies, the putting normal big fat microphones there were just didn't look right. That, you know, they were meant to the things you wear around here, these little blokes, all of those, the normal industry, and I hope this doesn't sound pedantic, wasn't too bothered about that because a microphone's a microphone and everything. To somebody worrying about television and wanting the public hearing as good as any microphone is going to do, but don't want to see a microphone, and people thinking, oh, that's pre-recorded. That's what I was about. And, you know, to get that, so I would go and talk. To get the little Sony mics like I've got here, I went and talked Sony into making a professional version. I mean, people were making them, but, you know, the battery would last a bloody hour and a half. So you've got somebody halfway through a song and all of a sudden the taxi driver's on the other frequency. You know, that wasn't really that good.
You know, Colin, when we look at your career, which from my reckoning spans 6 decades, yeah, I think it spans 6 decades, I reckon we've probably only touched on a little bit of what you've done and what you've achieved, and we haven't mentioned, you know, anything like the amount of shows you've led in terms of the audio side, or the concerts you've recorded, or all the other things you've done, and all the creativity with technology. We've not probably scratched the surface, and time obviously doesn't permit for that, but I think for what it's worth, I would suggest to you, from what the industry says, you'll be most remembered really for in your working career, the amount of career opportunities you gave people and the amount of mentoring, and that's pretty rare in our industry. Your generosity, I think, is what sets you apart, you know, from a lot of people. So, mate, thanks for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
My pleasure.